Hey, Brian from Garage Mahal. Behind, well, actually in front of me is this VEVOR outdoor water chiller. And you can kind of tell this is in a rather large box. And on the side is basically, it's the outdoor water chiller model ST2L-3500. And it's rated for 120 volts, 10.8 amps at 1.5 horsepower. So let's open this up, see exactly what we get inside, and then we go from there. Oh, and why would you, well, let me get better into frame by getting it out of the box, and then we'll talk about what you'll actually use this for. And so it's a box within a box. So we'll actually put this down on its side to get this out so you can better see. And there we go. A little bit better frame that we can see. So let's see how that looks. And I think we're gonna end up having to flip it one more time. All right, so, and yes, it has arrows pointing which way is up. So in this case, that was a little bit difficult of a process to do. So let's flip this back again, being very gentle. Okay, so here we go, back to the box. It's got a lot of strapping on it. Cut these away. All right. Okay, then let's cut this open. All right, so more stuff inside. So it's got some foam on top of it. And I think we can get this cut out of here. I'm going to slice down the side of the box. Make sure that there's nothing critical here. Okay, so this is the outer box. Lots of cardboard. All right, so let's get that out of the way. And then these straps, let's pull them out. Okay. So that's going to be the plastic off the top, so you can kind of get a really good sight of it, and that is your product manual. Then there's some fittings here, and you can see the 110 plug here. So I'll take that little safety part off so you can kind of see that. And we'll put that little safety on for now. Okay. Then spin around. Those are your connection points. And let's get around to that side. So that is your inlet, water in, then your water out. Then you have some of these fittings. So pretty versatile. So those are screw-ons. That goes through there. It has a rubber O-ring that's kind of like a pyramid section down. So you can kind of like put that down to where you need it to be. So as you're connecting this, and then you tighten it down, that's going to make a nice tight fit for you. Waterproof. And then other than that, you got a bunch of little, looks like they're all the same size, so you can kind of like configure them. And then it's going to be how you mount your water pass-through. Then on your controls, let's put this away for now. And actually, let's plug it in for a test shot of that. Like I said, it's rated for basically 10.8 amps, I believe. So I'll give you kind of an idea. So that is going to be basically your up and down. That's going to basically tell you where temperature is at right now. Set it down. And let's see how low it goes. So set temperature, 36 degrees. And then again, like I said, you do need a water inlet and a water out. So the inlet, you're going to need some sort of pump to start working and to pump the water through the system so it cools. And ideally what you're going to be using this for is two different things. And that is, if you have, the first of primary feature is if you have a aquarium, like especially a saltwater aquarium, a lot of them you need a lot of sunlight. So you're using the halogen bulbs, which make the water, very warm. So ideal temperatures, varies depending on the fish that you're keeping, but that can be anywhere to, 75 to 85 degrees. I think 80 is probably like the primary main temperature. Again, it depends on the type of coral and, sea fish creatures that you're keeping in there. And with halogen bulbs, sometimes they can heat the water into like the 90s to 100 degrees if you're not careful. And especially depending on the type of environment that you have your aquarium at, indoor, you will need the ability to be able to cool that water down to keep it in that like 80-degree mark. Then the second function that a system like this can use is what I'm primarily going to be using it for is I have a cold plunge. Basically, I have a 100-gallon tank that I'm going to be using as a cold plunge, and I need to keep the water cold and chilled. So that's what this unit is going to be primarily used for. So let me get a pump and everything set up and ready to go. But other than that, and there's the unit turning on. So pretty neat. So it takes a while for it to stabilize, but after you have the set temperature, this is the temperature of what it's going to be taking inside the unit itself. So basically it's 74 degrees like on the outside. That's the ambient temperature. And then other than that, we just have to hook the water supply up. So stay tuned. Okay, so we're outside. I have the chiller basically in place over here. I haven't plumbed anything because we're going to go through that together. I have a 100-gallon stock tank, and if you are unfamiliar with this is basically used to have livestock like cattle or horses drink from. So you fill basically with 100 gallons of water, and you know, you can have, I don't know how many horses or cows that you can drink from it, but that gives you a general idea. And I am 5'7", about 215 pounds, and I fit perfectly in this, depending on how big you are. My son is a little bit larger than I am. I've had him in here as well. You'll get a little more water displacement, but you can always replace water after that. But anyway, so getting back to the chiller, we're going to plumb that. I'm going to bring you over to a little makeshift workplace that I have set up outside, and we can go over everything step by step on, you know, what you need and how to do that. Okay, so we're at our, basically it's kind of like my outdoor deck table, but we're going to use it as a quick workshop. I basically have an aquarium filter, 225 gallons per hour, I think is what this is. So you figure if that's 100 gallons, this will change the water in there twice an hour. And considering you're not going to be really swimming in this, you're only going to be in it, you know, once or twice a day for a minute to 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long that you're in there, this should suffice. I picked up this one in particular because it has a UV bulb in here, so it'll help keep the stock tank or your ice bath a lot more clean, because the UV will like help destroy bacteria and germs and stuff like that. Also, I like to add about a cup of coarse salt per 25 gallons to my ice baths. So that's 4 cups in total. And I usually use like a rock salt or a water softener, salt, whatever you have, but make sure it's just plain old like salt, you know, no other additives or anything else in there, just plain salt. Okay. And that will help keep the tub cleaner, and you can enjoy it for a lot longer. How often you're in it is also going to depend on how often you have to actually change that water. But again, rule of thumb, I'm kind of in my ice bath once, twice, maybe 3 times a week. So after about a month, I usually change the water at that point. So I know it sounds kind of like weird having it for that long, but that's where the filter, the UV, and the salt come into play to help keep everything clean. I've known people to use like kind of like bromine or chlorine tablets or stuff like that. I try to stay a little more as natural as I can. Why add chemicals to anything if you don't have to? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so this is the fitting that comes with the ice bath. Comes with the chiller. So to give you an idea what that is these 3 parts rather. So we're going to be inserting it like this, and then you're going to have this rubber O-ring that fits on the end like that. So it's kind of concave to kind of give you an idea of how it's going to screw on. And I'll show you how that hooks up in a minute. And then you are going to need this type of fitting, and I'll put the links below, but it's a 1" by 3/4 adapter. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be basically putting this inside that fitting right there. And then you're going to be using an all-purpose plastic cement. Again, I'll leave the links down in the description so you can kind of see. And then we are going to be using a 3/4" by 1/2" barbed adapter. So this adapter is basically going to screw down onto this. And then I had the hoses hooked up already, but I'll show you what we're going to do with that. But that hose will go on the end of this. And then we'll have it stay in place by using a simple zip tie. And again, I'll show you through the process of how we're going to be doing all that. Okay, I have a separate video that shows you how to hook this up as an aquarium, but I'm going to show you basically how you're going to be hooking it up here. And basically what we're going to do is this is going to be the inlet configuration on that filter. And then this is going to be the outlet part that's basically going to put the water back into your stock tank, your ice bath. We're going to cut this in half, because what we're going to do is we're going to have the water come out of the ice bath. It's going to go into the filter, get filtered, and then it's going to go to the outlet part, and then that's going to go into the chiller, which is in return going to come out of the chiller and go back into the ice bath, if you follow me on that. So again, we're going to look for the halfway mark on this, which is going to be here. And we're going to cut through that. Okay. So now we have these two halves. Try to make it as clean as possible. Usually this works better if I'm like cutting down on something, but this will work for there. And then you're going to have this barbed adapter, but we're not going to put that on until we basically glue these pieces together. So first things first is I'm going to show you how to hook these up. Okay, so you're going to have this. This is the end that's going to come out. So basically what you're doing is you're kind of slightly putting some pressure on it so it pushes itself in. And then you're going to screw this piece down. And then that's going to be your connection. I'm basically doing the same thing on the bottom. Put that down. And then that's in place like that. Okay, so we're going to take this, open it up. And then we are basically taking a glue, put it on the inside. Be pretty generous with it. Then we're going to put this piece down and together. And then just basically push it down so it makes a nice fit. And then do the same thing on the other side. Just swirl this around the inside of that. Pretty good. And then same thing, just push this piece together. And then that will be that. Okay, let this dry for a little bit, but you can start putting your barb piece in here. And we can just use a pair of pliers and make sure it gets a really good tight fit. If you have to, you can put some Teflon tape on the end of that, but usually they're pretty tight. And again, we'll put this one on here as well. Got some flies out here. Okay, tighten that piece down. And then basically we're going to connect these two pieces to the chiller. Okay, so this top one is going to be the out port. So I'll tighten that down. This one's going to be the inlet. Okay, so they're snug, but we'll make sure that we tighten them up later on as we get going. All right, we're going to put this filter down here. And basically, so this is going to be the inlet. So we're going to put this over the side of the tub and kind of like slightly bend it into shape. So we're going to hook this up to the in part. And we'll make sure that this valve is open, which it is. And we'll move this a little bit closer. So this is going to be the inlet part here. That's going to go to the bottom part of the chiller into that barb. So I'll give you an idea how that fits on there. And we're just going to use a zip tie to put around this part here. And you can use a hose clamp as well. I'm going to use it on kind of like the middle of the barb area. And we'll make that nice and snug. Okay. Okay, then we're going to use the same with the, this will be our outlet. Let's make sure that's tight. And again, hose clamp, or in this case, we'll just use a zip tie. Make sure it's nice and tight. And putting that around the middle of the barb area. Okay. And then this will be our out. And again, nice and careful, put around the edge of that. And then I'm going to have this spray bar spray down into the water, like so. And you can get some like plastic seat clamps and kind of like tighten this up a little bit better. But other than that, we're going to put this on top of here. Nice tight fit. Everything looks good. That's the outlet. Okay, now we're just going to fill it with water and then turn the chiller on and see how it works. So stay tuned. And this is what I use, natural solar salt. And basically a cup in there for 25 gallons. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so we are about halfway, and we are just about, we're over the inlet part, so we can start the siphon going on this pump, which is pretty easy. Just open this up, and then just pull it up down a couple times, and then you'll start seeing the water rush in. Might need it to go a little bit higher, but there might be enough water in there to get the pump going. So we're going to plug that in. Hang on 1 second. All right, so I got it kind of started here. So the pump's on, so you can see how that UV light, if I get the right angle, and then to adjust it, you just hit that. So we're going to leave it on 24 hours. I'm going to work on the siphon a little bit more. And looks like it's starting to go. So it's going to need to basically run through there, fill up the inside of the chiller, and then start going through the spray bar. Alright, so it's starting to pump. Starting to go through the outlet into the inlet, and then once that fills up, we'll start seeing it come through the spray bar through here in a couple seconds. Okay, and there it goes. So now we can plug in the chiller and get that started. Okay, so to make this a little quieter, I'm just going to put this bar a little bit here on the side so it's not as noisy. And we're going to take a water temperature. So the water is about 53 degrees. And the chiller, kind of hard to see, but it's registering at 53 degrees. So we're going to hit set. And we're going to lower that down to as low as it can go. 36 degrees. So it takes about a minute for the fan unit to kick on. But we'll just let that run for a little bit, and we'll take a temperature reading as soon as it starts running. Alright, so it's starting to be sunset here, so the sun's starting to go down, and as that water continues to drop in temperature, I'm actually going to cover this, and then we're going to check back. But so far 44 degrees, and obviously not a big difference here. 51, 52 degrees, so it's getting cooler as it runs, but we're just gonna cover it up and we'll check back in a couple hours. Might be nighttime, so we'll see what the video looks like. If not, we'll check back in the morning. Okay, that's Sadie. But anyway, so temperature is 46 degrees right now. It's been about an hour So the water was at 53 degrees. I got it covered, and the pump is still working really good. And the connections are actually not leaking. That is actually the condensation that's starting to build on some of the cold lines. But so you figure that has dropped probably 7 degrees or so in about an hour, and it's probably about 75 degrees outside here. And like I said, the sun is going down, so the temperature definitely is getting cooler. So I'll just kind of give you an idea of how well that is working. So obviously, the hotter it is outside, the longer that is going to take to come down. And again, I was starting with a lot cooler water right out of the hose, 53 degrees, so that definitely was helpful. But this should maintain it pretty well. And you know, you can cut a foam lid to put underneath here to really help insulate that. The stock tank itself is pretty thick walled, so that should be a pretty decent insulation on its own, but just kind of give you some ideas. So we'll check back a couple hours, see where we're at. Okay, so the sun's basically just about down. We're at 44 degrees, it's about a half hour later. So anyway, it seems to be working about 4 to 6 degree drop an hour. Again, depending on what your air temperature actually is, I got it covered up pretty good. So we are going to let this just run on that set temperature, which is 36 overnight. We'll see how it is in the morning when we get up, and hopefully that should cycle and we will go from there. Anyway, Brian from Garageable Hall. Enjoy your ice plunge chiller or your aquarium chiller. Be safe out there.